Colorado has seen a string of devastating truck crashes. Now, a Supreme Court ruling will change who can be held responsible when a dangerous trucking company causes a wreck. Our Mark Salinger starts us off with that.
On Colorado's roadways, there's a complicated web of who's responsible for the trucks driving next to us.
At least up until last week, it was the Wild West.
When a truck crashed, who could be sued was dependent on where it happened. A new Supreme Court ruling changes that.
What this case does is it says, look, brokers out there have a duty. They have a duty to make sure that they are using due diligence, for example, in finding a safe motor carrier.
Grant Lawson is the managing partner for Colorado at the law firm for truck safety. The firm brought together a coalition that just won a unanimous ruling from the Supreme Court. It holds brokers accountable for who's paid to be on the road.
A shipper hires a broker. A broker is a middleman. A broker then goes out and finds a trucking company, a motor carrier, to then accept this load and take this load across the country and drop it off.
Every year, more than 5,000 people die in crashes involving commercial trucks across the country. The decision states that brokers can now be sued and held responsible for truck crashes and deaths.
It's going to change the safety for all of us on the road.
Lawson is still in the middle of a federal lawsuit over a 2022 truck crash in Weld County that killed a family of 5. The Postal Service hired a company to carry mail, which then hired a subcontractor. That case likely wouldn't be impacted here because a federal contractor is involved. But the impacts of this ruling are massive for an industry that's seen a lot of high-profile crashes here in Colorado.
Did the broker not do its job in putting an unsafe trucking company and driver out on the road? That's going to be the question.
Before this ruling, a broker could put a truck on the road caring first and foremost about money and getting paid without the fear of being held legally liable if something bad happened. Now that broker can be held responsible in a crash. There's also the incentive there that they could get sued if something bad happens, if they put somebody on the road that they say doesn't have a good safety record.
This addresses one of a couple of issues that you've been following.
Yeah, Grant Lawson there, who I spoke with, who knows this stuff very, very well here in Colorado, says that another big problem that they're seeing right now is trucking companies with bad safety records shutting down one day, then reopening the next day under a different name. They call them chameleon companies because they just kind of switch shapes and switch names just to stay on the road.
Mark Salinger, thank you. Governor Jared Polis is freeing Tina Peters early. Now the Trump administration is looking at giving her a taxpayer-funded payout. It would come from a nearly $1.8 billion slush fund intended to compensate political friends of the president who feel they were wrongly prosecuted under President Biden. Peters was not prosecuted by the Biden administration. She was prosecuted in Mesa County, a Republican county, but don't worry about the details. The money would come out of a new DOJ fund set up as part of a settlement resolving President Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS over the leak of his tax records. The Justice Department says the fund is for, quote, victims of lawfare and weaponization. A 5-person commission will oversee the disbursement of the money. The settlement does not outline any formal process for selecting who gets the cash. But in a briefing today at the White House, Vice President J.D. Vance said Tina Peters is a prime example of who should get paid.
Tina Peters is this woman who is about to get out of prison, thanks in large part to the president's good work in Colorado. This is a woman who, at worst, if you believe everything that the prosecutors said about her, committed misdemeanor trespassing, and somebody threw the book at her. This innocent grandmother was going to spend 10 years in prison, completely disproportionate to any misdemeanor trespassing that I've ever seen. Was that fair? No. Is it reasonable for her to get some compensation for the fact that she was treated unfairly? I think the answer is yes.
So Vice President, he completely rewrote history there, but I'm guessing if you followed the case, you know that, right? Tina Peters not innocent, according to a jury of her peers and the Colorado Court of Appeals, which declined to throw out her conviction. But more importantly, Tina Peters was not convicted of just misdemeanor trespassing. She was convicted on 4 felonies and 3 misdemeanors for her role in breaching her county's election equipment. We reached out to Peters' attorneys to ask if she wants one of those taxpayer-funded checks. Her attorney told us it's too early to say. He had just heard details about this fund secondhand. Some Democrats in Colorado are furious with Governor Polis for bowing to the Trump administration's demands to free Tina Peters. More than 600 Democratic elected officials, party leaders, and organizers are now asking the state party to formally censure Polis and keep him from speaking at their party events. And I've learned that complaint is scheduled to be voted on by party insiders tomorrow night. The signers of the formal complaint against Governor Polis include state representatives, state senators, a DNC member, and a long list of well-known names in Colorado political circles, many of them progressive voices. They want the state party to formally censure and condemn Polis, to ban him from being honored as a speaker or attendee at party events, and to put out a statement saying that clemency for Tina Peters does not reflect the views of the Colorado Democratic Party. The hundreds of members of the state central committee are expected to vote on that complaint at a virtual meeting tomorrow night. There are growing reports of immigrants being exploited in our state, at work and even at home. A landlord's been ordered to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars after threatening to report a tenant family to ICE. Our Angeline McCall has that.
In North Denver, one organization listens when someone says they're a victim.
And that's becoming very common, and it just hurts our community.
Jessica Rosales with El Centro de los Trabajadores says they've seen an increase in workers who have suffered wage theft and exploitation.
They get exploited, they get the job done, and then at the end of the day or week, they hear, I'm not paying you, and if you do something about it, I'm gonna go ahead and report you to ICE.
More than 10 clients every week are reporting it to them, an increase they've seen since the start of 2025.
In the past couple months, I'll say, with this new administration, the retaliation and the threats to ICE have increased.
It's happening at work and outside of it.
There's grave concern that people will sort of prey on tenants that they perceive to be vulnerable because of their immigration status, and violate just basic protections that we have for tenants.
Annie Kurtz with the team at the ACLU of Colorado just sued a landlord who now has to pay more than $182,000 after it was found that he intimidated and harassed an immigrant family and threatened to report them to ICE.
I think that the just inflammatory, dehumanizing rhetoric that we're seeing right now is incredibly dangerous.
Incidents like this often go underreported, meaning it's hard to track how often it's happening and difficult to see consequences come to reality.
It's not the time for us to stay quiet. It's not the time for us to live in doubt. It's the time for us to use the tools and the resources and get education from resources and organizations that are willing to help.
For that lawsuit where the landlord must pay damages, the team used a law that just passed a few years ago called the Immigrant Tenant Protection Act that is specifically designed to protect families from discrimination and retaliatory threats like this one that they litigated here, Kyle.
And Angeline, the work that El Centro's done in the community for years is about making sure that people know their rights and they come forward if those rights have been violated.
Exactly, and there is compensation for people who want to go that route where they have been entitled to money and they have been wronged on that. Now, some cases are so egregious that they go through the Department of Labor, even the Attorney General's office. But of course, we know that many families are silenced because they're scared, and many of these trends just continue, right, where they take advantage of the next person because there's no consequences.
Angeline McCall, thank you. CU Regent Wanda James is suing her colleagues on the University Board of Trustees months after that board voted to censure James and take away her committee assignments. James, who's a Democrat who's also currently running for Congress right now, filed a federal lawsuit this week against the individual members of the Board of Trustees. She accuses them of punishing her for speaking out against this university public health campaign, which used images of black people when talking about the negative impacts of marijuana. James called the campaign racist, wanted it defunded, but critics on the board accused her of a conflict of interest in violating her fiduciary duties because James owns a marijuana dispensary. She's asking for the censure to be lifted and for the other regents to pay damages and issue a public apology. Boulder County fought like hell to shut down a cement plant, and now they've just reversed the decision.
Grown to be okay with weeds in certain places under certain circumstances.
Denver's got 99 weed problems, but dandelions ain't one, so they're coming to a park near you. And we'll meet the Coloradans who wrote a children's book 40 years ago and are suddenly in the spotlight again, thanks to one post on social media. That's next. Jefferson County is the latest government in our area to put a pause on new data centers. The Board of Commissioners voted today to issue a 10-month moratorium on new data centers in the county. It does not include the one area already zoned to allow them, but the county said there aren't any plans for a data center there right now. They said they'll use this pause to look at the environmental concerns and weigh them against the economic benefits. Data centers often require large amounts of electricity and water. The commissioners want to look into how other communities are responding to the rise in demand for data centers. We're seeing pauses like this all over the area, including in Denver, which approved a one-year pause on new data centers last year. Weld and Larimer counties also have moratoriums. The years-long battle over a cement plant in Boulder County has taken a surprise turn. 2 years after the county ordered the Cemex plant in Lyons to call it quits, they're doing a 180. The county's permitting director says the decision to close the plant was based on a faulty study. Boulder County's leaders ordered the plant to cease operations in 2024, said that there would be a hazardous increase in traffic and pollution in the area. The county's decision was based partly on a traffic study that Cemex and CDOT did in 2022 and 2023. The study showed that daily traffic doubled when the plant lost its mining permit and had to truck in materials. But Cemex appealed, arguing the traffic study was too narrow and focused on just a couple of days of traffic. Well, today, the county's planning director backtracked on the decision. He said an independent review found there was no significant increase in truck traffic after the mine closed, and that the decision to terminate operations was made in error. So the county's reinstating the company's permit to continue operating. Meteorologist Chris Bianchi's along. Anybody with eyes and ears can tell that this has been a rainy little stretch we've had. How rainy?
And it's been pretty rainy for us, Kyle. Last 2 weeks, we've picked up more water in Denver than the previous 5+ months combined. Now, to be clear about this, we picked up 1.5 inches of rain since May the 5th, rain snow equivalent, of course, May 5th and 6th, that fell in the form of snow. The previous 151 days combined, December the 4th through May the 5th, picked up 1.43 inches of rain and snow equivalent. That is entirely, almost entirely, a commentary on how little rain we got in this stretch. And here, this matters. This is putting a dent in the recent drought, but it is not solving it. To be clear, we've still got a long ways to go, and we're adding a bit more rain to that right now. Now, what's going on is the jet stream is right overhead. That is spitting out these little narrow bands of rain, one north of Denver, one south of Denver. A lot of the short-range models are kind of condensing some of those bands. So point being, in the Denver area, I would expect some showers over the next couple of hours. Rockies game could be a bit soggy later on tonight, but we will have some of these localized bands spitting out a couple tenths of an inch of rain over the next little while. That rain will mostly be tonight. By tomorrow morning, that rain and snow will come to a close. 7-day forecast, we'll see those temperatures gradually rise up as we head over the next few days, and just in time for Memorial Day next Monday, temperatures will be in the low 80s with sunshine in Denver.
Our thirsty lawns are enjoying this rain. It's also going to help the weeds grow. Denver has a new approach for dandelions this year. Live and let live. Our Spencer Soysher explains.
We're the original green industry.
Some people think Denver has too much weed.
Well, that's a different problem.
But Denver Parks and Rec doesn't think these dandelions are weeds.
So the definition of a weed is any plant that's out of place.
District Park managers Nate Miraboli and Dan Rockney say the dandelions are not out of place.
I love dandelions. It's a great flower.
Denver has changed its dandelion policy. As they pop up right now in city parks, the city is not spraying them anymore, unless it's causing a problem or they're on an athletic field.
They're great for our pollinators, and we feel that it's just not the right thing to do to be spraying chemicals and killing dandelions and endangering our pollinators.
Well, pollinators are the reason we're here. If we didn't have good pollinators, we wouldn't have the food that we eat.
The city says the pollinators get the best out of the yellow ones. And if you think the Denver dandies are weeds and not flowers, just wait a few weeks.
When the dandelions stop turning yellow, you can see that the dandelions that turn white get taller. And so they're poking their heads up, and we can just chop those off with the lawnmower, and then you don't see them anymore.
Denver Parks and Rec still get calls from people who don't like seeing weeds. But Dan and Nate hope people stop thinking that Denver has a weed problem.
A lot of people like dandelions.
There's a lot of support for dandelions in our community.
For Next, I'm Spencer Soysher.
A pair of authors in Colorado is just as shocked as anyone that their children's book is topping the charts 40 years after it was written.
1985. It's an overnight sensation. It took 40 years already. It's a bestseller.
Hey, a reminder, you can catch this program streaming each night for free, 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus, and next is a podcast, wherever you find those. There's a children's book topping the charts 40 years after it was published, thanks to a shout out on social media. Our Amy Hunter spoke with two of the book's authors who live in Colorado about their unlikely second act.
You always love paradox.
When it comes to puns, Paul Levitt and Alyssa Goralnik are filled with them.
That was your favorite, the parrot who was also an ox.
It only made sense for them to write a book.
I knew I wanted to write a children's book because most of the children's literature I had seen was, I thought, dry, too eclectic, and I thought this would be fun.
Back in 1985, the two, alongside Doug Berger, wrote the Weighty Word Book.
So whenever you want to describe someone who is fierce, cruel, or savage, remember the truculent, and you will remember the word truculent.
The book is filled with stories, each with its own pun, to help kids remember vocabulary words, including one kid in Utah, Eli McCann, who is now a social media influencer.
It has been like 30 years, and I will be damned if I am not in the middle of a conversation regularly and I'll suddenly use the word like clandestine, and I can't help but picture a crab named Clan who was destined to help the rest of her crab friends secretly sneak out of a pot before it started boiling, and I'm like, clandestine. An act done in secret.
I looked and I thought, are they talking about my book?
It didn't take long to learn Eli was talking about their book, the Weighty Word Book.
We got an email from the publicist, and I think the subject line in the email was, "The Weighty Word Book is a TikTok sensation." I can't believe this.
40 years after its original publication, the book made it to the top of Amazon's bestsellers list.
I'm in disbelief. Still in disbelief.
Turns out the book's words still carry weight.
We owe a great deal to the kindness of this stranger who is now not a stranger, but a wonderful Eli McCann.
For Next, I'm Amy Hunter.
The University of New Mexico Press says the Weighty Word Book sold more copies in the past week than it has in the last 17 years. So the book is being reprinted to meet the continuing demand. That's a great story. We are back with your feedback next. Thank you much.
You're welcome, much.
Ooh, much. So much. Finished with feedback tonight, Michael in Aurora writes, boy, did Vice President Vance step in and say a bunch of horse manure today, speaking about Tina Peters. It would be nice if our federal politicians knew what they were talking about. You raised an interesting question, Michael. Did Vice President Vance know what he was saying wasn't true? I tend to think he did know that it wasn't true. I'm not sure that I could prove that. There are times that we see elected officials who truly appear to be confused or not know what they're talking about. And then there's other times, well, where they do something different. Kathy says, stop using Peter's dressed up shots, use the mug shot. I don't love the idea of putting mug shots on repeat. A photo taken against your will on the worst day of your life. We just want photos to be accurate. See you next time.